Alright, what is up PV family? It's your boy PV Crick got back at it again for another video, and today I've taken a while to do this, so I think it's about time. I kind of have the same philosophy as Brian, Android. I just kind of wanted to take my time, see what people thought, and then collect my own thoughts after seeing what people thought. So today we're gonna be talking about the upcoming ban list. It's gonna be a little bit more of a serious thing for me because I care a lot about this game. I care a lot about Dragon Ball, and I think there's a lot of problems right now. I probably have very different opinions than what other people might, and I'm probably gonna get some backlash and whatnot, especially seeing what happened on the Xenosnap list from Brian today, which I will mention and all that stuff. So we're just gonna kind of straight up dive into this. I've got my thing here. This is gonna be very simplistic. I'm not as skilled or anything like that as Brian, so I'm not gonna have like a really cool diagram. But we're just gonna jump into this. And the one thing I do want to say before we get into this is that I don't have a definition for wide-ranging ban list. I don't know what they mean by that. I don't really care either. I'm just saying what I think needs to get hit. The first thing is I have 7 things I really want to hit, and then we'll just go from there. I have my hits, problems after that, and then we're just gonna talk about like random things that people have been discussing and that I've seen and potentially considered. So so first, I want to talk about the current problem that we have before the ban list. So it's been talked about before. I think Scott Dashi was the first one to really make a big post about this, and it's that we have too many free plays going on. We have too many like low curve things going on that just do too much. One of the first things that will always occur to me is Drum and King Piccolo. King Piccolo alone, you're comboing this card for free, comes into play for free, and then Drum is literally barrier, blocker, and then it just negs something 10 when it comes in. There's a lot of things that just do too much for being like 0, 1, and maybe even 2. 7 drop expansion ultimate deck, Broly. But yeah, there's too many decks that have availability to this. I actually really don't like the meta that we have currently going on. I always advertise myself as somebody that likes to be creative, push ratios, push archetypes to their limit, so that I can play cooler stuff with it. My King Vegeta skillless deck. I don't have that many mono red Saiyans and stuff like that to work off of the actual engine of the leader, but I managed to fit something cool into it and make it, I guess, spicy if you want to call it that way. But like, I don't know, it's extremely hard to play anything out of the the main 7 decks I'm going to talk about in the next slide are like my biggest problem. Technically we do have like a wide meta to some extent. The problem is, to me, that you can't really play anything outside of it unless it's like a straight counter to it, like say Travis's Bulma deck, where you're sitting there and cycling Vegito Unison's minus effect so you can play with skills, or something like Yellow Topo or Hatch that kind of counteract the amount of value that decks are currently getting. But I have a lot of decks built. I have actually deleted all of them for Mass Saiyan now, but I had a lot of decks, and some are not even tier, probably. Maybe not even Rogue, just kind of bad. But Set 11 Goku, Black Goku, I have versions for that. Like AOD, I was actually testing for a while because I thought it was really good, and then it just runs into like the meta wall. Like there's a lot of decks that face that problem right now, and unless they're like almost on par with it, like Black Gogeta Zeno, King Cold to some extent, Blue Bojack, like all of these decks are really strong, and they have this kind of more or less the same problem, but they don't have cards that you really just play for free and do like 3 billion things off of. So yeah, that's kind of the problem that I see right now, and there's this, and I talk about this a lot. I've had the same opinion since set 10. It's not like this is a new thing for me. I've always been telling people this. The game has been power creeping slowly more and more and more, and that's how Bandai designs their game, I think, and I think that's fine. But you're gonna hit a point here eventually where I need to take a sip of waters. You're gonna hit a point where it's too much, and you just need a hard reset. And I think that's what we need right now. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with having a list like Brian's Xenosnap, and I probably should have had some reference here just to have it and show it. So that's my bad for sure. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it. People look at that list and they're like, oh my god, what are these cards? Blah blah blah. You want to ban everything? Yeah, that's the point. Hard resetting the game, saying, hey, look, we made all these broken decks. Like, we can't really go on from this point, so we have to, like, and I hear a lot of people saying making a Yu-Gi-Oh comparison. I've never played Yu-Gi-Oh, but I hear that Konami does this. They ban like all the tier decks or like cards that are really valuable in them, and they go from there. I think that's exactly what we need. And then maybe some extra stuff on top of that. So yeah, let's get into it. Like I said, I don't think meta is very healthy right now. Just one last thing, I don't think meta is very healthy right now, and we have this delusion of it being healthy, in my opinion, because tournament results. And again, I regret not recording tournament results for myself so I could have them as supporting evidence. But like every tournament for the most part that's regionals relevant, there's some like cool local stuff here and there, like the stage 0 tournaments that I play in that are great, that are creative. But for the most part, tournament results, at least in the top 8, are 6 to 7 of the top 8 are one of the 7 decks I'm going to talk about. And then you have like a couple rogue strategies that managed to bubble in because the pilot is very good. They have a really good build, and they probably got good matchups as well, as well as maybe worse opponents. So not to downplay anybody playing those decks, I love rogue strategies. That's my thing. I love doing cool stuff, but that's kind of like the problem I have with the current meta, and I feel like that's the problem that many people are not seeing, because we have like 6-7 decks that are actually closer to tier 0 than they are tier 1, but it just looks like they're tier 1 format because there's so many of them. So you might disagree, you might agree with me, I don't really I've seen both opinions. I think they're all valid. I don't really care at this point, to be honest, because opinions are very established right now for it. And but I'm always still willing to discuss it. Like, I understand people's points of view, and obviously that's how opinions work. When I present myself, I'm pretty strongly opinionated, I think, most of the time, and it comes across as pretty strong, or maybe mean sometimes. But then that's never my intention with things. I always try to, it is my opinion at the end of the day. You're trying to change my mind, I'm trying to change your mind. So however I have to get that across, however it comes across, that's going to be it. I never willingly try to be toxic about things or any of that. I just happen to be strongly opinionated when I talk about things. So let's get into the 7 decks. So here are the 7 things that absolutely need to get hit, in my opinion. And I've seen a lot of people, talk about these in different calibers. Ban this card in this deck, this card. Oh, just hit the leader, hit this, hit that. But a lot of the consensus, which I'm glad to see, are actually around these 7 decks. And I've organized them by color, more or less. So, first we've got black. I have played black ever since I started playing this game. Unfortunately, not since the inception, because I wasn't playing in set 3. I came in a set after with TOP. But back then, black was just this kind of overall color. There's a couple archetype decks, and there still are, for the most part. Black is still mostly, I think, an archetype deck, but they have been doing, Bandai has been doing a really good job of creating an identity for black. And I think that this really started in set 11 when they printed, I mean, Fight Against Fate is like a really, really generic card, but, that card, Man on a Mission, and they're generic overwhelms. A lot of decks play these, but, Specified Black Cost. Um, the biggest one, the absolute biggest one for me is Brainwashed. Brainwashed was a card that just, and now in set 13, the Kai Negate. Those are two cards that gave black a really good identity. They're very, very, very good black staples that when you play against black now, you're like, you have to absolutely always be thinking about these cards and somebody playing them on you. Oh, I can't go in with a triple strike when they have an energy up. They might have this. Oh, I have to be careful going wide, and I have to sequence my attacks properly in case they have the Kai Negate and screw my turn over a little bit. Excuse me again. Oh, I'm out of water more or less. I should have refilled it. But they've been giving black this really good color identity, and I feel like that's kind of going to waste with these current archetype decks. Dark Broly, I feel like, people have been finally coming around to not liking it. Ever since this deck was revealed, I'm like, 30k 6 drops for free? That seems like a little bit out there, and I think it didn't really become a problem, really, until they dropped the 7-drop red card. I think probably a lot of people would agree on that at this point. So getting rid of that, the ball, the 7-drop, could be a good hit. The problem now is you've got access to this Gogeta chain. So if you hit the Broly chain, or hit like the Heartfelt play with the red card, that's fine, but I'm not sure at this point that it would be enough because of that Gogeta chain. And in the Xenosnap list, there's also a clause for limiting the new TP Gogeta, which I'll talk about later a little bit more in depth. But I think for me the solution with Dark Broly is just banning the leader, personally. And for me, I actually like the idea of banning the leader and then revisiting it, because SS3 they've done that with, Mecha they've done that with, even though the second time was still bad. But I think that's a worthwhile thing. I'm not very heavy on disliking things that Bandai does here. Like, I'm not very against erratas, although I prefer banning or limiting things before errataing, because it just gets a little bit confusing in the end. I'm not opposed at all to banning stuff, because if it makes the game better, who cares? Even if it's wide-ranging. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if making it play mono black cards would be enough. Like, I personally, I just think that there's too many problems around Dark Broly that you just kind of have to hit the leader. And this is probably my least solidified opinion, because there's so many things you could do to Dark Broly. So next up is Vegex. I'm very hard. This is the exact opposite. Like, the only solution for this is banning the leader. I don't care if it's a starter deck leader. I don't like. We have to ban this leader. Like, it's literally thrived, not only lived, through 3 ban lists now. And every time, you could call it partly Bandai's fault for continuing to print cards that it can play. But, like, they have to print color. They have to print black, they can't just not print cards because of a leader or a strategy. Like, that's what happened. That's literally what happened to U3. It was a really cool archetype. Inherently, I think it was a little broken anyway. But it was really cool, and then all of a sudden, you release Vegex with the starter deck cards, and it just becomes nuts. Like, you just have to ban this leader. It does too much. And I think you can't really nerf it either, because the moment you do, just make it burst 3 instead of 5, that's just gonna make it bad. Like, the entire Vegex identity is just milling a lot, milling these free cards, and then on the back milling really fast, and then just recycling your deck. Like, if you make it mill 3, it goes too slow. You have to commit energy to milling cards. Like, the effects just don't turn very good. Now, giving your Unison Double Strike doesn't become, it's not very meaningful anymore. On that sense, it's kind of the same as Dark Broly. It's extremely hard to nerf it without, killing it. Um, so yeah, like I just think Vegx needs to like just get it out. Like I don't, people are like, oh, hitting a starter deck leader is not good. Like just don't make the leader broken then. Like ban it, reboot it, do whatever you want. Um, ban it for a while. Like think of an errata, revisit it with an errata or something like that. I don't know. I just think that the leader needs to go. Now we're moving on to yellow. I don't think Mecha needs explanation. I think like most of the committee at this point agrees Mecha needs to go. They didn't do it justice. They didn't really do it properly again. Um, I think that if you hit like U9 and Bergamo and just lock them the Bergamo leader, it would make the deck fine currently as it is, even though it will still be really strong. The problem is that it limits design, and that is what is most talked about. Limiting design is huge. This is why they banned Shugash instead of, and why they admitted to Cronoa like not really being that good. Like Cronoa itself limits design. Limiting design is probably one of the worst things you can do, I think, and that's why Baby's on this list too. There's really not much reason other than that. I don't have to go into depth of this. Everybody has seen it. Everybody thinks the same. Any 2 or less mono yellow extra card that you make has to be like underpowered, or you just have to be like, oh, if you're not playing Mecha Leader, which is also bad, I think. So yeah, since Shenron is probably one of the ones that people might disagree with more. I just think that they gave it too much gas. It hasn't been doing very much recently, I think, which is why people would probably disagree. But since Shenron just has too many tools, I think, and I think you only need to hit a couple cards. I think you only need to hit the 8 drops, the Triple Strike, and maybe Omega Shenron, and then it'll be fine. And this is assuming that Selzena also gets hit in some way, which I think would be good. But yeah, like since Shenron, you just need to hit a couple cards. I think if you make since Shenron just play the control deck again, I think that would be great. I think it's very annoying, but I think it is a very solid deck. We have somebody in Tulsa, Carey, who plays since Shenron control, and he plays it extremely well. He plays it very, very well, and it does what it needs to do. It can still lose because it doesn't have the tools, but then when you give this very strong deck a triple strike 30k, you play for 1, and you play this card that, I think they give it a little bit just too much, and they need to pull that back a little bit. Moving on to red decks, King Piccolo. I think everybody's been saying to make Drum unique and hit the Unison, and I agree. The only thing I would add to that is making all of them unique, because at least to me, this is my thought process. If you make them unique, and Tamri is the only one that is unique, which is why probably this is not really big of an issue. You don't want to get rid of your cards from your board necessarily, but if you give all of them unique and you can't play more than one, there, offensively at least, there is a clause to play something like Belmod, Double Devastation, which puts these cards in the drop, and then Symbol gains a lot of value. So I still think that having multiple symbols on board, for example, and getting a lot of value out of that activate is detrimental. So that's the only reason I would say to make all of them unique. So just add symbol to that list, and then you can't get rid of the Unison, because that just makes the deck bad, as everybody says, I think. So yeah, just adding. Bandai has this awesome keyword. Well, it's not technically a keyword, but they have this awesome skill called Limit now. Just put Limit 1 on the card, and I think it would be okay. I'm more favored towards just banning King Piccolo, again, because I don't have a problem banning leaders and stuff like that. But I can definitely see a clause for just making all of the 3 drops unique, and then just limiting the Unison, because the Unison doesn't put in as much work in any other deck. King Vegeta, as much as I want it to get hit, I don't think it will get hit, because it's literally a new deck. But I think that inherently this deck causes a problem, and especially if all these other decks around it get hit, it's going to be a problem, because inherently it has the same problem as these other decks. You play on an extremely low curve, you play extremely good cards, and it just has very, very, very good tools. I think the Young Invaders are a problem, because you're just It's not uninteractable. You can technically, counterplay them and stuff. But I think that they're inherently a problem. And the aggro tools that the deck has and how fast it hits you early game is a problem. You do that and then you settle into Jiren and Mono Red. You settle into the Vegeta 5 drop. It's very hard to get around it. And it's obviously not unbeatable, but I think, again, it's more about the concept. Like, just taking this uninteractable burn damage, you do draw one, so it's like, I can see why people probably wouldn't want to get rid of this, but I don't know. Personally, I think that it is somewhat of a problem, and I've seen this be discussed in the Vegeta's Saiyan Army group. That King Vegeta is a problem. We've seen a lot of people topping with this. It's not super hard to play, in my opinion. Anything at a high level is going to take skill, obviously, so, I always make sure to be careful while mentioning that argument. But yeah, I think personally that King Vegeta needs a hit of some sort. On that area, I don't know what it would be, because it's very hard to hit this deck. I've explored a couple options like hitting the Young Invaders, or I really don't know on this one. But final one, I think, is Baby. It's the same argument as Mecha. Limit design. They've printed Intoxicated, whatever. For some reason, I know that, like, the first word of the card, Intoxicated Justice or whatever, the one with Goku Black in it, the Championship Pack card. If your leader is blue and you don't have a field in play, it's pretty easy to get around Baby in that sense. But I still think that that's bad design, and you don't want to be doing that. Because again, every single mono blue counter that you make, unless you put that specific clause in it, is going to be like, ooh, can I play this in Baby? Ooh, can I play this in Baby? Like, there's no other, like, Trunks stuff was revealed today for blue, and people are like, oh, why play this when you could play Baby? It's not the same. It's two different decks. But when it comes to Control Blue, that clause does exist, I think. Why would I play anything other than Baby? Because it's the most efficient. So I think banning Baby, the leader, would be the best, or just banning Tuffles. Although that would make Baby a little bit too bad, I think. So one thing I did think about was making Tuffles like a once per turn or twice per turn, like a limit 1 or 2 effect, where the first two counters that you play have that reduced cost, but everything after that just reverts back to its original cost. So you can play something like your Floodgate, like Gohan or Rumble, for that reduced cost, but then everything else you have to, like, kind of tap for. Machiorb, all those servant negates become less valuable, and you have to think a little bit more about how you want to conduct your turns. So I think that could be a reasonable hit. I don't know how many people will agree with that, but yeah. So that's the 7 main hits that I want to see. No matter what, I don't think that all of them will happen. I don't even know how many will happen. Again, this is all prediction and whatnot. Ooh, there's rain going on in the background now. It's been raining a lot here in Texas recently. A lot. I don't like humidity. Anyway, that's off topic. Next is things that could be a problem after those hits. So again, this goes with the whole theme of delusion and the fact that we think that we have a healthy meta right now. So what is this intel? So once you hit all these decks, ideally, for me, there are things that could rise up and be a problem. King Vegeta is one of them, assuming that it doesn't get hit because it's new. But we have some, and these are out there. Again, let me make sure I mention this and make it clear. Nothing after those 7 hits that I want is solidified. This is just like stuff that's up in the air, just kind of randomly talking about. Excuse me. This is why I need my water. I talk too much and it affects me. But these are things that could potentially become problems after those hits. Rad Broly being the biggest one for me. I hate this archetype already. And I think it's very unhealthy for the game. I think this is probably the biggest archetype mistake that Bandai will ever make. That's a big claim because, we've still got many sets ahead of us. But I think this archetype was a huge mistake, and I will always advocate for that, no matter how well it did or how poorly it did. And another thing is, I think the only reason it's done poorly is because of Mecha and because of Dark Broly. Red Broly has a very, very, very hard matchup into those. I don't know about anything else currently in meta. Maybe King Vegeta would give it a tough time too, I think. But Red Broly archetype is extremely unhealthy. It kind of gets into the same realm of Majin Vegeta and Reboot Gohan to some extent. You know, you have this extremely fast deck that you have a very hard time countering, and it hinders you. And you know, there is a clause for the evolution booster negates, testing the opposition and imposing presence. Like it got two extremely extremely good defensive options that could prove to make it a little bit more of a problem. So I think if you hit current meta, you have to be extremely wary of Red Broly and maybe preemptively hit it because it could be a problem. You know, this is all hypotheticals. It could not, maybe we should hit this, maybe we should not. So, this is all hypotheticals, and I'm more open to talking about these. But King Cole is another one that I actually thought King Cole was going to be very weak, personally, and then my mind was changed. And now I'm leaning towards it being too strong if some of these really strong decks go away. It has a huge amount of value as a non-interactable strategy per se. You can't really interact with fields, and they all have very good effects. The only card that can really interact with them is Zeno Unison, and you can technically counterplay them now with the Blue Yellow Zamasu. But on top of that, it just has really strong cards to play. It has really good value in the long game. I think it does run out of steam eventually if you play against it properly. But it just has a lot of tools, and we could see this deck becoming a problem. Maybe along with Blue Bojack. I just haven't seen that deck in action. I really don't have an opinion on it. Next up is kind of green stuff, Majin Vegeta. I think this deck will always inherently have a problem into red, which is why I think it never really will see too much play. But again, it's the same concept. Like, I think the biggest mistake Bandai made with this leader is making it awaken at 5, because then you can just extend it and have that turn 2 potential kill. It just extends too much, and then it puts you in a crippled position really easily, especially with the ultimate deck Boo. Like, if you swing on my leader, you have to drop 2 cards now. Yeah, I mean, I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. It's just way too explosive. I think it's way too consistent for what it does, but it needs to be, right? It needs to be consistent to do its thing. So, we could see this deck, I think, become a problem. I wouldn't know what to hit. Again, these are just kind of like afterthoughts. Reboot Gohan, I just want to talk about it because people think about it. I strongly disagree with the opinion that Reboot Gohan should be banned because I've played it since its inception in Set 9. And it's like the one deck I've had meaningful results with, topping the PPG Invitational. I just don't see it happening. I don't know. I don't know what to say other than that. I don't see it happening. I don't think it needs it. But it's the same thing. If Mecha and all these decks that hit, I could see it happening. Just because, I mean, I do think that there's a lot of tools against it now, and matchups now are very hard for it. It is very hard for me to pick up this deck and play it. I played it in Tulsa regional, and like every single round, I played against Mecha, Broly, Red Broly, Vajax, King Vegeta. Like every single match that I played took a lot of thought to do properly, and that might be because of the build I have, or although I think it's better than standard. So yeah, I don't really see this deck getting hit. What I will say is that I can see Feet getting hit, because that card is a problem. That card removes the RNG that the leader initially adds. It's kind of a weird balance because the leader takes away RNG by being triple strike on the back and just going really fast at you, but it also adds RNG by trying to all-in you really fast, and then, hey, what are these cards that I draw? Or I genuinely believe that you can properly play around the leader enough so that you won't lose to it, but that requires Feet getting hit. And that's it. Next is SS3 with a question mark. The reason I have a question mark is because it's really weird to have. And the only reason I have this on here is because of my dad. He plays SS3 a lot, and that's an understatement. He has, thousands and thousands of hours on Untap. He has hundreds of iterations of SS3, and he's played it for a very long time. And I know how powerful that deck can be, which is why it's potentially a problem. Untapping, especially with something like the Boo Unison or the, Kefla Obuni, being able to untap any more than 3 energy, which is already really good, at the end of your turn is kind of out there, especially with floodgates like Gohan and Rumble existing. We've seen it rise a little bit now. It won the Vegas Regional. Brandel the homie won it in the Stage 0 tournament last week, which was great. I just think that this could be potentially a problem that we might want to be thinking about. It has rough matchups, and if you know how to play against it properly, it has a really rough time. So if it becomes popular and a problem, I think it might solve itself out by people learning how to play against it. But I just want to put it out there. Same thing with something like Majin Vegeta. And this is the same thing with the last one, Mechi. Say a lot. I need to get rid of that. But I think Magicabra is inherently extremely, extremely strong. It has, the same meta problems. My teammate Taylor plays it and likes to play it. He sucks at the game, regardless. But, no, he doesn't. He's very good. But, I've seen the deck play. I've seen what it does. I've seen a very good player play it, which is Taylor. And I see it potentially being one of those problems. I could be wrong. I could be right. I don't really care. Again, this is all opinions from now on. And even the 7 that I got, it's all opinions. But I think I'm right. I don't know about these, because this is just throwing it up in the air. So I think Magicabra could maybe see being a problem. Wow, this is long. But it's worth it. I think it's worth talking about in depth, and just having a relaxed talk about it. Whether you watch it or not is up to you. Whether you skip around or not is up to you. So if you're this far into it, I appreciate you. So now we're gonna talk about random cards. It's random because obviously it's random. There's no pattern to these. So let's talk about it. The biggest one being Champokai. I didn't agree with this at first, but and I still don't. I don't think they should get hit. Although, as I say that, I'm kind of thinking about that and being like, okay, maybe they should. So I think that just kind of shows the volatility in this opinion. I can see it getting hit because every deck I've profiled up until now except my own, I was like, oh, I'm playing as one of Kai, and it just makes sense. Like Brian said in his video, your best win con is even unisons are not that good of a win con when you slap a keyword on them because of Clash of the Masked Warriors. So your best win con is just swinging those later and slapping double strike on it. It just removes skill from the game as well. Swinging in, you have being a 2 life is being a 1 life, basically, which I don't think should be the case. I think you should be able to be put at 1 life and then playing from there and not having to worry about some random set 1 card or world tournament card that is just gonna make your life really hard. So I can definitely see them going from that sense. Next up is Floodgates, and the only reason I have this on here is because last week when I was playing the Stage 0 tournament, I talked to somebody very, very sensible. His Discord name I believe was Billy something. Forgive me, but he made a very sensible argument of banning every tier 1 and tier 2 deck, and banning every staple, or limiting it. And that seems really, really crazy to me at that point. But it makes some sense, with the thing I'm saying about hard resetting the game. That would be a really good way to expand on that too. So that's why I have the Floodgates on here. They kind of remove skill, but and I think that if the game goes back to being more, I'm gonna pay for my cards, you're not gonna have such wide boards that you have to play Floodgates. But this, and when I'm talking about Floodgates, I'm talking about Dormant, Nimbus, Gohan / Ready to Rumble Vegeta, Topo, even Imposing Presence to some extent. although it's not super great in the correct scenario. But like red, raise, topo, and imposing presence, and then black doesn't really have one other than like protector of the people, but that one's generic. So yeah, the biggest one being dormant. I think that one just removes a lot of skill from the game because you just have 2 attacks. Period. Nimbus is somewhat of the same clause, but it unisons and leaders get around that, and those are still really pivotal parts of the game. So I'm okay with Nimbus existing. And then everything else is like, oh, you can't do this unless you do this. The only one that matters is riposte at the end, and the only reason I have that is because it was on Brian's list, which I think, again, I think his video was extremely, extremely good. If you haven't watched it, I greatly recommend it because he has some really, really, really good opinions. But yeah, riposte is the only other one because, I mean, I think playing multiples of riposte in one turn is a little bit out there. I think it should be limited to one, or like have an energy limiting. I don't know what you would really have to do, but yeah. Free counterplays, specifically the free ones, I think we could do without those, personally, or limiting them to one, especially God Sealing and Frieza. Yamcha has gained a lot of traction in red, which is great. I think Yamcha is a great card. But the fact that they're free, they are once per turn. You can't counterplay with anything after that, but you've never really needed to do that, which is why people only play those. And if you do, you play those before the free ones. Vegeta has barely seen any play ever, really, but it's the same argument. You don't really want to be abusing these cards. I think that one or two that would be okay because it matters more. Especially with Trunks. Trunks can hit any card in the game that doesn't have Deflect, which I think is detrimental. Frieza can almost hit any card in the game as well because 7 or less covers like, I don't know, probably 80-85% of the cards in the game. So I think I could see them getting hit, although I'm like almost sure that they won't. This is just another one of those, oh, this is just out there kind of argument. Fighting Against Fate is one that I personally have, that I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with, but it's the same argument as Champokai. This card has been throwing in like every deck. I've seen it in King Cold from somebody. Mecha plays this like every single deck plays this card because it's free. You're going to set up a drop eventually when you try to go for your kill turn or defend. You're going to set up a drop. You're going to have 6 cards in your drop. So you just put a 1 or 2 in this deck. It's the same exact argument as Champokai, except that it doesn't necessarily remove skill. It's too easy to play and it's too generic and it's too good of a card. It's arguably the best overall in the game, and it's that generic. But that's it. That's just it's a very me like opinion and argument, and I could see it getting some kind of hit. Next is the new Gogeta TP, Thorny and the Dark Empire. I think this card is just kind of busted. Having Unique on it doesn't really do anything in my opinion. Same with the 8-drop Triple Striker Shenron, because you can play something like Belmod and just recycle it, and if you counter it, they're just going to play another one. Yeah, it's just... I don't know why they didn't limit this to like the Gogeta Zeno deck, or just put the same requirement that all the other ones have as Black Saiyan only leader. But that wouldn't remove the problem of it existing in Dark Broly, so I don't know. Another reason to have Dark Broly banned, like I said earlier. But yeah, there's not much argument other than that one. Cat Blow, I've hated this card since set 9. This is probably one of the most controversial ones, just because people have always been talking about this card. I don't like Cat Blow. I don't like how uninteractive it is. I don't like, in this sense, I don't care what you want to say. Like, it's not interactive. Oh, you can interact with the cards that allow it to... I don't care. The card itself, design-wise, is uninteractive. You are burning your opponent without them being able to do anything about it. And if you bring to me any other card that more or less is the same thing, it's not... I mean, you can interact with Piccolo Jr., Eradicator. You can interact with battle cards, period. Unless they have Deflect and or Barrier, which SS3 Gohan Master Surpassed has. It's a 4 cost, but it's not on the same realm as Cadblow. Rival Seeker into the 6 drop, like the amount of recyclability that you have for Cadblow might even warrant it like potentially banned, because like you can get around having it limited at 1 or 2, but I think it would limit it enough. Like I think you just have to hit this card no matter what. Like Invoker hasn't been as present as much, but again, it's more about the concept. I don't think Cadblow is healthy for the game, period. And this is one that I'm definitely a lot stronger opinionated on, if you can't tell, because part of it might just be that I don't like the card, I don't like Invoker, but I really do think that this card just needs to get hit. Next up is Bean. Jordan Beard, if you're watching this, please don't send me hate mail. Mr. Bean. This card has been strong since its inception, and it's been alive since the absolute beginning of the game. Any like aggro deck that I build now, unless I absolutely can't fit it, is going to have Bean in it, because it extends your plays, especially with the issue of cards being cheap or free. You're just extending and extending and extending. That's why Storm was an issue. That's why Super Shenron was an issue. Untapping energy. Did it play? I can't remember if it played Bean in the end. Sorry, but like my Gohan deck, Bean. Mecha has Bean in it. Like every like really good deck, unless it doesn't just need it, like Dark Broly just already plays everything for free. It doesn't need Bean, and you don't benefit from playing Bean in it really. But a lot of problem decks have had this card be an issue. I could see it getting limited. I could see it getting banned. I could see something happening to it. Do I think it'll happen? No, because Bean is just a generically good card. And if they do their job correctly and hit the proper aggro decks, I think it'll be just fine. And then I already talked about Riposte earlier, so yeah, you know, if you watched all this video, I appreciate it. You know, my tone was different in this video for sure. I definitely take this a lot more seriously than just willy-nilly doing a cool deck profile or something like that. I care a lot about this game. It's very important to me that this game is healthy, because I really enjoy playing it. I don't want to stop ever having that feeling. So yeah, that's that's gonna be it. It was quite a video, which seems to be the trend for me. You know, videos are long, but again, if you guys watched all this video and watched all my thoughts, I really appreciate it. I appreciate you, and I hope that you'll consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more content like this. I'm gonna start making more generic videos. I was kind of opposed to it because I don't want to be overlapping content with people, just to be completely honest. But I think putting in my own thoughts into it is valuable, because you know, I have a much different mind than other people do. So again, like, I just want to reiterate, if you're supporting this channel, I really appreciate it. I always want to make sure that I'm making content that people enjoy and that is enjoyable to watch, whether it's serious or just messing around with Rohit. But yeah, with that, I will bid farewell. Take care, guys. I hope you have a good rest of your day.